What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and today we're talking about grenades. This weird little stratagem that was released in 10th edition, its bizarre rules, and some of these strange issues that its weird wording creates for the game. In previous editions of 40k, grenades were a weapon profile that was used on many units, but new to 10th edition, it has been added as a core stratagem that is available for use by many basic infantry across the breadth of 40k, kind of unevenly to be fair. If you're a Xenos army player, there's like a 50-50 chance you don't have any grenades in your army, and it's incredibly important given its ability to smooth out attack math. So what exactly does it do? It targets an unengaged unit that hasn't shot yet in the shooting phase and targets the similarly unengaged enemy within 8 inches and visible to them, rolls some dice, and deals some mortal wounds based on the result. Importantly, it targets a grenade unit from your army. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. It's a unit with a grenade keyword on their datasheet, but let's put a pin in that wording real quick because we will talk about that later in the video.
That's called foreshadowing.
Now, here's one of the reasons this stratagem is so weird. The targeting of the stratagem is not tied to your eligibility to shoot. Eligibility to shoot is a status in the core rules that says you haven't performed an action like falling back or advancing, and there's some other effects as well that will cause you to be ineligible. Fortunately for the grenade stratagem, it doesn't care whether you are actually allowed to shoot, only that you haven't yet shot. It is usable on a unit before they shoot, so you can use it on them, throw their grenade, and then select them to shoot normally, but once they're selected to shoot, you can't do anything with them. However, if that unit isn't eligible to shoot at all, they are still an eligible target for grenades. After all, it would be weird if a unit that was ineligible to shoot in the first place had already shot in the shooting phase. That would be very strange. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse for grenades. There are effects that allow you to be eligible to shoot if you are engaged in melee. For example, having pistol weapons or being a monster or vehicle and benefiting from Big Guns Never Tire allow you to make ranged attacks while you're in melee. However, even if you have one of those abilities, the grenade stratagem turns off. However, units that have fallen back or advanced or are affected by another ability that would prevent them from being shooting phase activated, you're still allowed to throw grenades. This is things like performing actions, for example. This means they can also get around enemy abilities that prevent them from shooting. An example being the Changeling, who can target enemies at the start of their shooting phase, and if they roll high enough, prevent them from shooting at all. But you can still just throw a bomb at that dude. He might be tricksy enough to dissuade you from shooting him with a gun, but not enough from just throwing explosives at him.
You want Asgard? It's yours.
Whatever game you're playing, it won't work. You can't defeat me.
No, I know. But he can.
In addition, the target of the grenade strat doesn't actually have to be an eligible shooting target. It simply has to be visible, in range, and unengaged. This means that while you can't throw at engaged vehicles, for example, which you could normally shoot at thanks to the downside of Big Guns Never Tire, they are protected from grenades. The grenade is too indiscriminate for you to want to throw it next to a vehicle and potentially hit your own guys, I guess. However, there are some stratagems, like, for example, the Tyranid Vanguard Onslaught stratagem that improves Lone Operative to a 6-inch bubble that you have to be inside in order to target with ranged attacks, and grenade not being a ranged attack means that it can just do its damage normally.
Another idiosyncrasy of grenades not being an attack is how it is measured. Grenades targets an enemy unit that is within 8 inches and is visible to the grenading unit. However, because it's not an attack, those measurements don't have to be taken from the same model. Attacks must have range and line of sight measured for each model that's trying to participate in the attack, measured from that model in particular. You can't measure range from one guy and line of sight from another. However, that's not how things work for normal abilities and stratagems. When the range between two units is measured for something like grenades, the distance between the closest two members of the unit is measured. So we have a tactical marine over here attempting to throw a grenade at these Raveners, and they're about 4 inches away, clearly within 8 inches. However, that guy doesn't have line of sight to the Raveners. That doesn't matter though, because he's not trying to attack with a ranged weapon. So, as long as we have line of sight from anyone in the unit, we can use the stratagem. So the Marine over on the end here can clearly see around this wall, they can see the Raveners, and because the other Marine is within 8 inches, suddenly the Raveners are an eligible target for the grenade strat. This has been kind of a problematic system for Warhammer 40k for multiple editions now. Non-attack damage sources and abilities oftentimes will measure from models that do not have line of sight to the target, even if the ability itself requires line of sight. The same thing was true for psychic powers in 8th and 9th edition, for example. And it's weird every time. Now, not being a ranged attack also means that there are some other upsides and downsides to the stratagem. It is not affected by other defenses against ranged attacks. And it doesn't trigger reactive abilities such as Blood Surge moves, which I talked about in my video last week, after it's resolved, since again, you're not attacking, your opponent is just spontaneously combusting.
The port is quite good.
Yes, quite good.
Indeed.
Most certainly.
What year is it?
51.
Ah,
Delectable.
indeed.
Yes.
Oh dear, what is it?
I've spontaneously combusted. Oh, I am sorry.
Oh, it's quite all right. I've grown tired of living.
Ah, very good then.
For the best.
Yes, indeed.
Now lastly, let's talk about one problem that arises from the targeting of the grenade stratagem. There are several characters that use grenades for free. A good example being the Reductus Saboteur, who has an ability on their datasheet that says, once per turn, one of your Reductus Saboteurs can, once per game, get a free grenade strat. And you can use that even if you have grenaded from a different Reductus Saboteur. This doesn't allow you to do more than 2 grenade strats in a phase, so you can pay for one normally and then duplicate it with the Saboteur ability, and each Saboteur only gets 1 of those, so if you have 3 of them, for example, you're only ever going to get 3 grenades, 1 out of each for free. That seems pretty straightforward, right? It's an ability that lets you target that specific model with a grenade stratagem. Now, models and units in 40k have generally been synonymous if you're referring to a single entity unit. So a unit composed of a single vehicle or a single character, for example, like the Reductus Saboteur, the rules will use model and unit interchangeably. Now let's talk about a different character who has essentially the same ability, the Death Guard Biologus Purifier. This guy allows you to, once per game, target his model with the grenade stratagem. This ability is essentially identical to the Reductus Saboteurs, with one big difference. It lacks the clause that the Saboteur has that allows you to only do 1 in addition. Now, that isn't really relevant to us right now, but it does mean that you can throw potentially up to 4 grenades in one single shooting phase from 3 Biologus Purifiers plus your normal grenade.
That's a lot of damage!
But here's the weirdness in this ability. The Purifier is a character leader that's meant to attach to units. He's not a lone operative, he's not really meant to operate by himself, and he has a very powerful leadership effect, which is basically like 60% of the reason that you're bringing him. He gives his whole unit lethal hits and critical 5-ups, which is really good. Which is why it's so important that at the beginning of the video we said that the stratagem targets units, since as I said before, models and units are really only interchangeable in 40k if they refer to a single entity unit, which, if the Biologus Purifier is attached into a Plague Marine squad, he's certainly not. He's going to be 6 or 10 models. This is problematic for his ability since he literally cannot be targeted by the grenade strat. Since you don't target the Purifier himself, you target the Plague Marine unit to which the Purifier is attached. He has to wait for the Plague Marine unit to be dead so that he becomes a single entity unit again. Certainly don't think that's the intention, and for the record, I don't think that's how it should be played. That's simply what the rules state until there is an errata to his ability to allow him to target his unit with it. In my opinion, how it's supposed to work is that you get a free grenade strat targeting the Biologus Purifier's unit. However, range and visibility must be measured from the Purifier model, not the unit normally. Now, obviously, the Purifier himself is meant to be throwing the grenade. So if he's using his ability, in my opinion, you would measure both from the Purifier, not anyone in the unit. That would be the difference when using the free grenade from the Purifier versus the normal grenade stratagem. And it's the downside of using the free grenade. You get a free one, you don't have to spend a CP on, and you can duplicate it. However, you have to measure it from the single character model in the unit. So he has to get up close and personal if he wants to rain toxic death on the foes of Mortarion. These non-attack damage sources are super weird in basically every miniatures game that has ever been written, and it's no different in Warhammer 40k. Hopefully this video has been eye-opening for you. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Big thanks to everybody who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are amazing and I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.